had one more question about PMF, like, for like seed stage companies, like I get the part that during the scoping, you'll figure out like the common patterns across problems that should be solved for and how you can iterate on the product. But is it fair to say if you're not getting a lot of discovery calls in the first place that you kind of don't have PMF? Is that also fair to say?
If you're not getting a lot of, if you're not,
Discovery calls.
not necessarily, no, not. So your question is, if you're sending out outbound and you're not booking a lot of calls, does that mean that there's not indications of PMF?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. That basically, a lot of times what that can mean is that whatever the value prop that you're leading with in your email is not resonating with the buyer, right? So let's say the idea or the exercise of going through itemizing all the value that your product offers is incredibly important. That's what you guys did on the onboarding doc, right? The buyer persona worksheets that you guys went through. What you need to do is like, if you've given it, sent out enough emails, sent out enough connection requests, and you've looked at the data and you're way below the benchmarks of where you should be, then perhaps we need to adjust the content, right? It's just the messaging in that content that needs to be adjusted. Maybe like that one sentence that you thought is really what the market is looking for, the problem that they're trying to solve is not hitting. We just need to switch it up and change it to something different. Sometimes just by changing a sentence, it opens up the market. So the first thing I would say is we need a really decent size sample, right, of sending out emails and sending out LinkedIn outbound. Once we have that sample size, we come back, evaluate, look at the data, look at the benchmarks, and see how we match up to that. If we need to adjust, we adjust content. And then we go from there.
Yeah, so just to pipe in on that, you guys should all pretty much be, by the end of this week, ramped up on warming up your emails. So either end of this week, beginning of next week, you guys should be actively sending outbound. So even if, let's say, we assume you start on Monday and you're sending, however many a day from your email accounts, even by Wednesday, if you say you send at least 100 emails of a specific subject line, right, we can at least start having a look at some of that data. But like cold outbound takes significantly more volume than people think, unless you are in like you have like a very specific problem and you're catching them at the exactly right time. Like, for example, me and Darren, we're running a campaign at this very second. It's got 100% open rate and 15% reply rate, and it's like 2 days in, right? Because it's a very specific person we're targeting, and we know certain information, and it gives us a competitive advantage. A lot of you guys won't have that, so you're like, okay, we need to send 100, 200, 300, and then we need to go, okay, what's our open rate? Is it at least 50%? If it's not, we need to go back to subject lines. We don't need to change body copy, we need to change subject lines. And then when we get that subject line better and more people are opening it, if we're still not getting responses, we need to look at the first line of the email and see how we can craft it. Also, with anything cold outbound, the shorter and more concise you make it, the better, right? Just think about, like, what was it Einstein said was like, if you can't explain, was it nuclear fission to a child, you don't understand it well enough, right? It's like when you're understanding like the exact problem you solve, the shorter and more concise you can present, like, this is what we do and this is how we solve it, the more people will tend to respond positively to your email because it shows a deep understanding of the market and their issues. All right. So like what I see a lot of from people when they start their cohorts is very bloated emails, like multiple paragraphs, like, oh, we do X and Y and Z. And it's like, you need to condense, like cut. And then eventually, like, the best emails will tend to be 3 sentences, and that's it. 2 or 3 words in the subject line, 3 sentences. Are you interested in this call to action? And that'll get you across the board.